Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I'm Brigid Burke, and it is the 18th of March. And good morning, Joanne. I hope you're feeling better. I know I just happened to see your Facebook message that you had not been a little bit under the weather there. So I do hope that this morning's an improvement. The fact that you're here, I think, is a good thing. I had some interesting. And Alex is on. Good morning. Good to see you. Good to see you guys, and I see somebody else is joining, so we'll see who that is in a minute. But yeah, interesting. And Alistair, good morning, good afternoon. Okay, so cool. We've got 3 people on. Setting up this morning's live stream is a little bit of a first of all, I guess I should just say Mercury retrograde is driving me absolutely crazy this time. It's like maybe because it's also there with the Venus retrograde. Maybe it's because of all the other planetary activity, but it's like Mercury retrogrades. It's like from the 15th on, it's been like, go, we're on steroids here. And Kathleen is on. Good morning. And Joanne says, yes, I use, like, I don't know, the rain triggered it. Oh, okay. Right. Well, changes in weather, yeah, definitely seem to be something that are triggering a lot of this stuff. Okay, so I don't know if this live stream is showing up on YouTube as copy of Morning Coffee with Brigid. I should have set it up. Usually I set it up right after the live stream. If I know I'm going to do one the next day, I will schedule it in advance. And today I went, oh crap, I didn't schedule it. So I went on to schedule it. And what does it do? It makes a copy and then it proceeds to put it up as a copy. And I'm trying to edit the copy like at 7:26. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Anyway, Mercury retrograde has been like, I mean, it's been a doozy this time. I had sent an email yesterday to Phil over on Wings of Pegasus about something, and he replied to me actually really quickly. But the reply didn't seem to have a whole lot to do with the actual email that I sent him or the way he responded to it. It was kind of clear that I don't think he really looked at what I'd sent to him, and I was just kind of feeling like, okay, I feel like he kind of just blew like right over that one. But then he sent a general message to his Patreon followers, and he said, oh yeah, he says, Outlook decided to take all of his email, like a whole lot of it. Seems normal on my end, no copy. Oh, okay, good, thank you. Good, then the fix actually worked, and you see it, so perfect, thanks, Alex. Yes, but so Phil actually had all of his mail dumped in, like half of his mail dumped into his junk folder. Outlook just decided to bracket everything and throw it in junk. And he said, and then it deleted after a certain point. So I had to go back and go through archives. So I imagine he spent all day trying to go through emails. So I was just like, well, that's certainly Mercury retrograde in action. That just sounded like it was horrendous. So I'm like, all right, I'm not gonna gainsay the fact that I don't think he looked very hard at my message. It was just kind of like he wanted to do a quick reply, probably because he was on a roll trying to do all these replies. And there's been some weird communications here as well. I don't think always, I don't know. Sometimes I was trying to do a lot of stuff yesterday, trying to get some more stuff up online. And I just felt like I was every step of the way, there was just some weird thing that was happening. And I don't always have a whole lot of patience for that. So, but you know, fortunately nobody heard the tantrum but me. And finally I was just like, stop being a whingy little bitch. So it's yeah. So in any case, it's not me. It's come from my cars. It's come from my cars in Bangkok. Well, that's probably worse actually, because yeah, I don't need problems with either one of those things right now. Not that I go too many places at the moment. So yeah, so we'll see how things go here. So okay, so it's so we'll see where we end up today with everything. The only thing I was going to bring up this morning, in terms of other than Mercury retrograde seeming to be crazy, is that we have is that I got some questions yesterday about the 5 of Swords. Okay, and one of the questions I got was, what do you do when you have 5 of Swords as an outcome? You know, what does that mean? How does that, because a lot of times, especially if you have a very good reading and you get this as the outcome, you're kind of like, well, wait, what? You know, because the 5 of Swords, obviously, we look at it and we see this image of a person who's holding a sword over their shoulder, and they're kind of looking over their shoulder and they're like smirking, right? And there's 2 people with their heads down kind of walking away. And the idea there, that is a card that is kind of mentioned to be a card of defeat. And so the question then becomes, does the outcome then mean that somebody is defeated? And let me just get rid of some of these people. Speaking of Mercury retrograde, there's some weirdos on this morning. So yeah, so we have so the Five of Swords really, if you get it as an outcome, especially if you're kind of feeling like you're doing the right thing there, there's a when you feel like you're doing the right thing with the Five of Swords, what it can mean is that, okay, we have to remember that fives have to do with struggle. Okay, they have to do with the things that we're struggling with, and the Five of Swords in particular has to do with intellect. And so when we have the so when you have a Five of Swords, you're struggling with the intellect. Yeah, and we've got a lot of on here. We've got some bots on here this morning. It's been a couple days since we've had those, and there might even be a couple other ones that I haven't quite taken down yet. But in any case, so we've got so you've got the Five of Swords. You have to remember that this can be a limitation of intellect, and when you have a limitation of intellect, this means that the thing that is defeating you and that you are struggling with is your own mind. Frequently, it will come up when we impose limitations on ourselves and say things have to be this way, or when we kind of are when we may be actually just feeling that, that we have analyzed and understood maybe the way something is coming out, but sometimes it's that we don't actually understand the way it's coming. We don't actually have the big picture. We think we do. We think, okay, I know exactly, I'm zeroed in, I'm on target, I know exactly what this is. And we may not be wanting to look maybe at other factors, or maybe there's just other things that could come in and surprise us. So Five of Swords, I feel like when it shows up as action, is it's saying, be careful of engaging in limiting thoughts, because what these thoughts might be doing is you might end up ultimately defeating yourself. The defeat may not be somebody on the outside. We also see Five of Swords associated with things like jealousy. We see it focused in with things like, so we have, we talk about jealousy. It can talk about defeat in the sense of, if people see it as an outcome, like, am I going to get the thing that I want? Then if I get the thing that I want, will I, I'm losing my train of thought. If you get the thing that you want, if you want that as an outcome and you get the Five of Swords, that would generally be kind of a no. Okay, that's the way a lot of people would interpret it. And again, that's if you're talking about a simple yes/no kind of question. But I also don't know that tarot necessarily only should be looked at in the yes/no realm. It's not. You will see different techniques for doing yes/no answers, and frequently, what you will see is if somebody wants a simple yes or a no and they want to pull tarot cards, then what they're going to do is they're going to say, okay, I'm going to pull 3 cards. And there's kind of an idea about what cards are yes, what cards are no, and which cards are more neutral in terms of what they mean. So it's almost like if you have 2 yeses and a neutral versus 2 yeses or 3 yeses, or maybe a no and a yes and a neutral, like what all those might mean. So there's different books. I know one of the books I've recommended to my students, which was a Liz Dean book. She does actually have kind of a method that kind of works. But I often find that when you're strict yes/no questions, you always have to be a little bit careful too, because things can change. Sometimes things can change. You can have something that goes a certain way, and then it can change. So yeah, something to think about there if you are doing readings. And a lot of times too, if you are very strongly emotionally attached to the outcome of something, or something is causing us a lot of anxiety and we're reading about it, then we may our minds may want to go to the most precise and most literal meaning of those cards. The mind wants to get involved and say, well, this means this, and this means this, and this means this, so therefore it has to mean this. So the intuition's not necessarily getting its word in edgewise there. So that is something that you want to think about the intuition, getting its word in edgewise, and what that actually could mean. So anyway, that's kind of my thoughts today on the Five of Swords. That was the question that I had been asked. And so I wanted to address that a little bit, and just the whole idea of using cards in that kind of a very specific kind of a fashion. So what I was going to do as an aside from that, because I didn't have a particular topic today, is I'm going to do a cartouche reading today. I have cartouche. I always have a variety of things hanging around. So we're going to start with cartouche today and see what we get for today. Just to kind of as a general 5-card for today. What we might need to know, because this is a week. We do have the equinox coming up. The equinox is coming up on on Thursday, actually, because we're at Tuesday already. So yeah, we're super close to the equinox. So we're super close to something coming to an end here. And all of us, I'm sure, are curious about what exactly is coming to an end. Maybe this is why some people are getting readings that are telling them, think outside the box. Yay, live cartouche. Yes. Thank you, Joanne. Yeah, I always, this is one of my favorites. I think the only other person I've seen who uses this deck, and maybe there are others out there, it's a hard deck to get these days, is Patricia Weston in Ireland. She's the only other one I know who uses this and has used it. So I remember the first time she ever read for me when I was living in Dorada. I had gone down to her place down in Scaries and had a reading with her. And she pulled cartouche out. I said, "You are the only other person I know who uses these cards," because they are so hard to find. But I do love them. Okay, so let's do just a 5-card. What do we need to know coming up for this week? I'll probably do a formal reading for the actual equinox itself. I'll probably do a big reading, but let's just see what we kind of need to know for this kind of stuff. And so let's, so let's see what we get that comes up here. Okay. So, what do we have? First card, Sphinx. Okay. So Sphinx has to do with kind of what we're talking about. What's secret? What's hidden? What we're not seeing? What we're waiting for? Sphinx often comes up when we need to, the general, as an advice card, it would say, sit back, be patient, and don't say anything. Which we know has kind of been the tone of this Mercury retrograde. Don't jump to conclusions. Don't let yourself get crazy with things you're seeing in news, social media, other places. And even in our personal lives, I feel like if there's things that we're waiting on, it's like, we're asking about this point of waiting. I feel like sometimes when it shows up at the first point, it's almost like an "are we there yet" kind of card. Like I'm in the car. Are we there yet? And I know I frequently have questions like that in the morning when I talk to my guides, and the answer I get is just, I was having a little bit because Azrael has been talking a lot to me about what he calls the third harvest. And I said, well, how often does this harvest occur? And apparently not very often. But when it comes to time, I find, and I've said this about angelic communications before, is that they will tell you, if you say like, oh, well, this happened in a week, like you say something like that. And they kind of like, okay. Like time doesn't have any meaning in the end. It's not even just that they operate on different time. Time doesn't mean anything. I feel like there's kind of an approximation. When you're talking about beings that talk about things in thousands of years, they don't really care. And Ellen says, and hello, Ellen, I'm so glad you're on today. And oh yeah, and I got to respond to your group WhatsApp this morning. But that's spot on for me. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. So, okay. So that's it clearly seems to be, yeah, there's a lot of people where it's just kind of like, we're waiting on something. And there's something, but when Sphinx comes up, there's a secret that needs to be revealed. There's something to be uncovered. Because Sphinx, you know, implies something almost, when we think about the Sphinx or the Sphinx, the riddle of the Sphinx, okay, where you think about the Sphinx standing in the desert in Egypt, it's kind of like there's some, it's guarding some mystery that needs to be uncovered. There's some riddle to be answered, right? So there's something there that we're not really seeing yet. And our point of interest is the Scarab card. Now, the Scarab has to do with endings and beginnings. It is kind of the death card of this deck. But oftentimes this has to do with the way in which, you know, because the Scarab Beetle does tend to represent that kind of resurrection type thing. It tends to be a motif. It's a motif that you certainly see in Egyptian tombs and things. And so the Scarab is about, yeah, what's ending and what's beginning. And Alex says, yep, waiting for a message for months now, just trying to be patient. It's hard. I'm with you on that, because again, the mind kind of gets in there and is trying to interpret stuff as it happens. So as things happen to us, we're like, oh, okay, does this mean this? Does this mean this? And yeah, I do it too. I mean, I'm not, you know, I'm certainly not, all of us who are on this path and who have an intellect and intelligence and are thinking about things, that's kind of the thing. So Scarab, yeah, there's what's being uncovered about this new beginning. There's secrecy here. What do we need to know about the changes that are coming? Because they've certainly been hyped as big changes, right? And I'm not suggesting that they are hype. I mean, I feel like there is going to be big change. How much we're going to see right away, immediately, I don't know. I don't know quite how that's going to work. But then we have, okay, our factor to be considered is Pyramid, okay? And Pyramid is, okay, this is the initiation card. And it does go very well with Sphinx. Well, Sphinx sits near the pyramids, right? Pyramid is about a test. It's almost like we're having a test of something. Now, what that test is, in a bigger spread, you can typically see where Pyramid falls will tell you where the test is. If it falls in your first house, this is a test of your faith in yourself. If it falls in your second house, it's a test of where, you know, what's going on with maybe your finances or money, or how you're going to, you know, handle values. Or for a lot of people, I've been seeing it in the 8th and 12th houses, which means that this is like a soul initiation for a lot of people as well. So, but Pyramid is also something that is resolved with time. So there's kind of a, I'm going to say a Saturnian flavor in the astrological sense, because there's almost the sense of, you know, things don't happen before their time, or it needs to take time. And it may be, we may be testing ourselves or maybe testing things out in this interim. So Pyramid, more or less, I think, is reminding us that things will happen in their proper time, that you are going to get there. It's a reassurance. It's like when I get the rune Ewaz, which looks like the letter M. Ewaz, it says you've progressed far enough to feel a measure of safety in your position. But because things haven't happened yet, am I from Scotland? No, I'm not. Yeah, but Pyramid has to do with the way in which, yeah, in what it is that we're waiting for, and the fact that things seem to be taking, as Alex just noted, a long time. Things are taking time. They're taking a long time. So what is the advice card from here? We have water. Okay. So water has to do, and it's funny, we've got a little pyramid on this card too, which I think is interesting. Water, so this would represent the Nile River, right? The water is basically telling us that we need to, you know, there's this idea of flowing with things right now. It's almost like we're in water and you're kind of just bobbing along, you know, trying to go with the waves, you know, rather than, you know, flowing with the current rather than fighting against it. Because that is exactly what the mind tends to do. It tends to fight, and it tends to fight against things. And what's interesting is we've got cards 21, 22, and 23. And that's interesting too. And we've got the number 4 coming up very prominently, because 22 adds up to 4, 13 adds up to 4, and of course Bast is the outcome, and that is card number 4. So I don't know if this is implying something over the next 4 days-ish kind of going on. But yeah, these are all the days following the equinox. It seems like things are moving ahead here. So with Bast as the outcome here, Bast is the happiness card. And I find that interesting because this morning, reading that I did with, and again, people who are not normally on this live stream know that I message my guides in the morning after I've done my morning practices. And Azrael's message this morning had a lot to do with, he says that he more or less says, I represent the justice of heaven. I represent, it was, Balat Paripsin, I'm the justice of heaven. And he said, that you need to have faith that everything that's happening is balancing itself out, and that ultimately what you should feel is joy. I see that a lot. Even in the messages from Makkah, I get the Wunjo rune. This is the rune of joy. Of course, it's a cat, is what Joanne says. Yeah, right. You're right. It is a cat. In fact, there's a little teeny cat right on the top of the little sistrum here. And yeah, there you go. It's a cat. The cat goddess. Well, Bastet is, yeah, she definitely seems to represent, oh, and this is really weird. I have another deck sitting next to me and a card just popped out of it, and it happens to be justice. Okay, so we were just talking about balance, that Libra energy, right? We're talking about that balance of things. So kind of interesting that just popped into my hand there. But Bast is saying, like, no, just go with it. Go more with what the gut's telling you than with the head. I almost feel like a broken record when I say that. Like every live stream I get on and I'm saying the same thing. But that seems to be the message, because the ultimate outcome is happiness. And Bastet is also a social card, though. Because remember, we've gotten a lot here. A lot of us, I think, in the face of things and in the face of collective stress and of things that are going on. And Ma'at. Yes. Ma'at, kind of. Ma'at, I think, is more, I always think of her as a feminine aspect, kind of Thoth, in a way. But there is definite, but yes, but Ma'at is justice, though. Sorry, that's actually what you're saying there. Yes, the living truth, the Ma'at. That is kind of, yes, absolutely. So absolutely, that is correct. And it's, yeah, it's this idea of living truth, and where there is not truth, there's going to be correction. Okay, living truth. Where there's not truth, you're going to have correction. So, yeah. So I think that's really, really interesting. That it's kind of telling us this is something. It's almost like an ordeal. It's like an initiation that we're going through right now. And like most ordeals and initiations, I don't know how many. Like I said, we were talking the other day about life cycle rituals and stuff. By the way, I do have another article that's going to be coming out in Metapsychosis Journal. And I think I was thinking about that because I got some feedback on that yesterday, because a lot of it was on the back rooms. And I think I've talked about that here, so I'm not going to repeat myself on it. But it was talking about the back rooms and how those become kind of symbolic of our being almost in this perpetually liminal kind of space. And it makes me think of this because with Pyramid here, it's like, okay, we feel like we're, like I said, we're waiting for something to happen. But with most initiations, there is secrecy. Okay, when you undergo an initiation, and again, we talked about, I think what I was talking about is how most initiations that we have in the mainstream and the public sphere are not, they don't really do anything. People get together, they say some words, they have a party. That's kind of it. Real initiations involve things that are secret, that are, and they do involve ordeals. They involve things that you go through, and that the way in which you negotiate those ordeals determines how strongly you come through in the end. And that's kind of the point of it. The whole point of it is to break you out of the familiar and allow you to respond to what's not familiar, right? We're responding to that space where things are not the same, where things not quite where they were before. It's not a matter of trying to go back to where things were before. It's a matter of saying, okay, how do I respond in this new space? Because I'm going to be a new person. And yeah, and I think about it, even with the occult initiations today that are being, the OTO and stuff like that being as, I'm sure that they're far more watered down from Crowley's era, but still, the idea is if you don't try to peek ahead and find out what's going on, it's kind of like, okay, this actually does have the potential to transform you. And I can say that everyone that I ever had did. It's something, and it changes things in your life. It can, I don't want to say that it can upset some things, but it's also it brings in that rearrangement factor. And we can have these naturally as well. You know, one does not have to go through that kind of a thing. But a lot of the time, too, if we think about it as an initiation, actually, you have to understand that you're just going to pass through it step by step until it reaches its end. And as you pass through each step, you just have to go with the flow of what's happening. You can't, you're not going to know, and it's not necessarily to your benefit to know. That's an interesting thing, too, when we think about the way in which we, like a lot of us on here are people who are interested in tarot or interested in astrology, or, you know, some people have taken these classes with me and so forth. It's, yeah, so there's this sense that when we do cards and stuff, a lot of times it's because we want to know, right? I want to know the outcome of something. I want to know where this stands. And oftentimes I often tell people with the cards, really the only thing that we can absolutely determine with the cards is where we are right now. And that could change. You know, where are we right now? That could change. So yeah, it's so let's see. I wanted to do that. That's what I have from Cartouche. Cartouche is reminding us to be joyful, and it's reminding us to go with the flow. I think it also is suggesting that we should prioritize our own joy too. That's something. And again, prioritizing your joy doesn't mean selfishly grabbing for what you want. I mean, prioritizing your joy says, okay, whatever path I'm on, it should be the one that is authentic to where your heart is. There are always going to be things in life that we are doing or not doing that are not pleasant or not exactly what we want. But the question is, what is our priority? And if we have things going on in life that maybe are not exactly what we want, but we don't feel we can. Been reading a book called Dark Side of Wisdom about initiation in ancient Italy. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, actually, message me later, Ellen, and share that with me, because I think I think I would like to share that. There's actually, or maybe if you want to share it here, because there's other people I think who will be interested in that for sure. It's yeah, I'm interested in that title. And Joanne says, yeah, oh, that sounds interesting. Yeah, Joanne is. I know. Like I said, I don't think Sam's been on lately, but I know that's something she would probably be interested in, being she does a lot of studies of ancient Italy. So yeah, that's great. Yeah, and it's funny that we're talking about initiation and that. In fact, Ellen, I think it was you who read my book and said that's kind of an initiation in and of itself, because it does kind of journey through our ideas about the underworld. So yeah, I mean, when you're passing through something, when you're passing through these phases, there is a darkness there, like, and darkness not in the sense of being evil, darkness in the sense of you can't really see where you're going. The universe provides initiation when you're ready, I feel, Alistair says. Yes, and I think yes, and I think you're right about that as well. There are a lot of natural initiations. It's a good book about dreams and incubation rituals. Ah, yes, incubation rituals, which is the way a lot of that's the way a lot of that kind of stuff went on. Certainly the mystery cults did a lot with incubation, and even people who practiced Goetia and so forth at that period of time, which means something different then than it does now. A lot of people used incubation rituals. In fact, when we all talk about dreaming, yeah, that's what it is. The ways in which one can creatively use dreaming for this kind of stuff, because oftentimes in the dream state, that is when that's when the analytical piece has finally shut off. And we can finally hear things, but we see things more in image. We don't necessarily we don't, it's not a direct discourse and conversation in a rational sense. So it's very interesting, but that seems to be where the information is. In other words, like what I'm kind of getting in my head is the information's all around you. It's just we may be looking for it. We may be trying to analyze it too much, which we've been hearing over and over again. So let's see what the astrology cards have for us today. Let's see what we have. Okay, this comes up a lot. I don't know why this one card. Well, I don't know. I'll find out, I guess. Our first card, yeah, is the Grand Cross. Okay, so here's our provocation again, being provoked. And so I think that fits in with our Cartouche reading, because I feel like a lot of us have been provoked. We're kind of like sitting on pins and needles, like, okay, we know change is coming. We're trusting that change is coming, but we feel provoked. And what's provoking us, we have in the environment here, we have Aquarius, okay? So Aquarius, again, remember we have Bast, we have that social element. Bast is actually one of the cards in Cartouche that represents Aquarius. Sirius is the other one. And yeah, so we've got this kind of Aquarian backdrop, which is, again, it's very, very social. And that's really interesting in view of the fact that, like, you could look at 2025 as the hermit year because the 2025 as a number adds up to 9. But we're not being called to do the hermit. We're being called to get out there. We're being called to get out there and participate. Participate in the world, participate in what's going on. And Aquarius suggests not only participation, but support. This is a very humanitarian card. This is about caring for the world, about the bigger picture, about, I mean, yes, Aquarius can also have a very detached energy to it. We can talk about technology and the influence of technology on things. And I think particularly in these times, like we were talking a little bit about yesterday, when we are thinking about, what it means to be human and humanitarian and caring for others, vis-a-vis how we're dealing with technology, that could be some of our provocations, it collectively anyway. How are we managing this? And it also makes me think, because remember I have said, a lot of people are talking about this Thursday as being the end of Kali Yuga. Nothing, no pressure there, right? Nothing, nothing small. But it's the end of Kali Yuga. But I've said, is it the end of Dwapara Yuga? Is it the end of that, of the Yuga that has more to do with ambition and, building things up and with advancing technology? Is it more of an end to that? Because Aquarian energy, especially with Pluto in Aquarius right now, there's definitely the wisdom gained in solitude needs to be shared with others. Perfect. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's definitely a good way to look at it. Yeah, wisdom gained in solitude because, right, because it would be like my guru always used to say. She would say, you talk about somebody who goes and meditates under a tree in the desert. And they say, okay, well, who's benefiting from that meditation? I mean, the tree is, I guess, but, is any, you want to, this is why I think for a lot of times the kind of work that she does, it's like, yes, you want to be able to move into that center and silent space, but you also need to be able to move in the world. A lot of times we think to move in that space, we have to remove ourselves from the world. And maybe for a period of time we might, if we need to heal, if we need to withdraw, if we need to, but it may be saying, we're getting towards a time where this needs to be shared. Now, what we're not seeing here, here's our 12th house card, okay? Now, the 12th house, this is the card of the, again, this is that house of potentially of self-undoing, but it's also the house of freedom. What we're not seeing is that, okay, what I'm kind of getting from this is that we actually have a chance at liberation. We have a chance at liberation from doing the same old crap over and over again. But because the word here is escape. What we're not seeing is that we're kind of on the path to an escape, but we don't want to get the mind too involved because the mind is the thing that drags us back into the loop. Because the mind wants to measure things. It wants to put things in that realm of time in a way that may not be useful to us right now. It's not that it doesn't have its usefulness, but that's just it. We need to, you kind of need to surrender to what's going on and understand, understand that your mind doesn't understand, and that's okay. Whatever is here, there's the potential here to be liberated from a cycle. There's the potential here to be liberated from this way of thinking. But that is also the house where our self-doubt comes in, where our fear, so we can retrap ourselves again. It's interesting that we started this with a discussion of the Five of Swords and gets to this, but yeah. So, there's a chance here to be liberated from a certain way of thinking. And interestingly, our advice card here happens to be air element, which is communication. So yeah, the fact that this is coming up during Mercury retrograde, I would suggest means that we are communicating. We are kind of, we need to pay attention. We need to be careful about communications and about what is being communicated to us. what is being communicated to us. And our outcome card is the first house, which is the body. It's also the Aries house. But I think first house specifically has to do with us, with our identities. And what is being communicated to us about who we are, or about what is authentic to us. What is authentic to the body, I think, literally. Because frequently when we talk about the split, we talk about the mind-body split, right? We talk about the split between Cartesian dualism, right? I think, therefore I am. Cogito ergo sum. I think there, which is, that's really our whole problem. What makes me a living being is my ability to think. And the thing is, it's saying, no, your body is part of what makes you a living being as well. And the body stores a lot of information. And this is where our instincts come from. This is our intuition. A lot of this is something that's stored in the body. Your nervous system isn't just up here. In fact, one of the things I was watching the other day, it was about the way in which people, that's coming up big with my guides and reads as well, seeing things from different perspectives, is what Joanne's saying. Yeah, it's what I think I was seeing the other day was, okay, it was this same person who was talking about time the other day. I was watching something on lucid dreaming. But one of the things that they used to do in the 60s, they had this thing called hemisync. And I remember I used to actually have the hemisync tapes. The idea was that if you could quiet the part of your brain that likes to overthink and tune it in with the side of your mind that is more intuitive or so forth, that if you could get them to work in harmony and the frequencies together and harmonize those frequencies with the frequencies of everything else, that your brain could kind of be this, it was almost like a superpower for the brain. You could have ESP and telepathy and all this kind of stuff. Now, the only problem with that, it's not that, not that it's not good to be in sync with your environment. I don't think that's a bad thing, but we overestimate what the brain does. We overestimate our abilities as humans, because I have often said this, and there's a lot of other things that talk about this. And I know probably from a neuroscientific perspective, maybe I'd even get some arguments about this, but nobody has proven to me yet that the brain isn't a filter. I don't think it's meant to expand our consciousness. I think it's meant to limit it. Okay. I think the body, that in itself is a limitation. So the only way to overcome that limitation is not to rely so heavily on the brain, because I remember hearing that too back in years ago. They're like, oh, we only used like 10% of our brain. And that was the whole thing about that. And I don't know. I don't think, I think we privilege that's part of the problem that we have. Part of the way we need to think differently is like, no, maybe we don't need to privilege the brain. Maybe we don't need to privilege thought. Maybe we need to go more with what our bodies are telling us. Learn more about from what your body is telling you. And also from what you're experiencing from people around you. People can say, how it is, actions speak louder than words, or sometimes even people will say things to you. And, as they're saying things, you're just kind of like, I don't know, there's something in you that's telling you what they're saying and what they're thinking, or what's really going on here may not match. And it may not necessarily be because the person's trying to lie to you. They may be lying to themselves too. Or maybe they're just doing what they think is social and proper and polite. But there's a lot here about paying attention to the body, and I think it's about more than just taking care of ourselves so we don't get sick. I think there's more to it than that. Okay, so just a quick one of these. Yeah, and here's here you go, Joanne. Here's Mabel. We have the slowing down card right at the beginning. Okay. And yeah, I feel like this has definitely been a time of slowing down, and inner feeling of which we are unaware. I don't know. The brain does everything. It's freaking innate. I'm a neuropsyche. Yeah, it does. It's fascinating what it does. But when you look at it in the context of the universe, it doesn't really do. It's actually quite limited in what it does. It's not that it isn't fascinating and that doesn't do a lot of cool stuff, but it's definitely limited in its own way. It is still amazing that it exists in the way it does. But in any case, inner feeling which we're unaware. Here's our ordinariness card again. And this also could just be there's a desire for ordinariness. There's a desire for familiarity. That's what's kind of driving a lot of the way that we may be looking at things. And the external feeling of which we are aware, we got this card again, Six of Cups. Definitely a physical aspect there, is what Joanne is saying. Yeah, well, yeah, it's, yeah, so we are definitely, we are, on the plus side, we're trying to ground things. The brain creates the ego, which limits us. Exactly. That's right, Alistair. Yeah, because it's, and that's why people who know my work know I'm not a huge fan of philosophy, even though I studied philosophy. That was most of my undergrad, actually. I've studied a lot of philosophy. I've read a lot of things, and it's interesting to think about. But philosophy, Plato and all those, it's kind of like, yes, we are great. Humanism is great because of our intellect. That's what puts us above everybody else. That's what makes us the caretaker of everybody else. And you see how well that goes, right? When we talk about being the caretaker of the earth or something like that. And it's like, no, we use that to say like, how can I get more stuff for ourselves? I mean, I'm not saying people on here do that, but that seems to be the way of society. So yeah, there's definitely this sense of letting go of the past, of nostalgia for the past, familiarity. We are slowing down in the midst of that. We are trying to get comfortable, really. But then we got this card. This is the this is a page. I think is this the Page of Cups? It's the Knight of Cups. Knight of Cups, I think. Understanding. The cage is open. You are free. You are free. You don't necessarily want to go in the realm of the past and the familiar. I wanted to post my halfway out through Foucault. Yeah, Foucault is yeah. Well, that's a whole other subject. But yeah, you are free. Okay. And so the outcome is you are free to create. We have the Empress energy, right? Using that Taurian energy, using that ability to manifest and create, you're free to do that. I think this is what we're seeing is a lot. You're free. You don't have to do things because our minds immediately go to what worked before, what made me feel comfortable before, what made me, feel like I could kind of feel a certain way. Like what makes me comfortable? What is the thing that I go back to? What is the nostalgia that I have? And a lot of times if, again, depending on everybody's childhood is different, right? But if there's a period of time in your life where things perhaps were comfortable and happy, we may kind of gravitate back to that space and say, I want to get back into that space. But the idea is that that space may have been good and it's a good memory, but there may be better spaces ahead. But it's a matter of thinking about things differently. It's amazing how, as humans, when we do have things, we only tend to focus on what we don't have, on what isn't working rather than what is, or what doesn't meet our expectations, or what doesn't quite measure up to, because nothing can ever measure up to a lot of times what the expectations are made with the mind. The mind wants something concrete. It wants to be able to look at something. And I think Americans are actually, I think, the worst with this, because everything, even when you fantasize about something, well, that has to be realistic. If you write science fiction, it has to be realistic, right? But it has to follow all the regular rules. It has to follow this and follow that. Like, maybe you'd want to think about something without having to think about all that, Maybe you need to just allow yourselves to create. Sure, I mean, in final analysis, it doesn't really matter whether it's something that can be manifested or not. Sometimes just the process of breaking out of a normal way of thinking is enough to bring about what the change is, I did pull a final card for us, and this is from the Essential Oil deck, and it is Arbor Vitae, or Arbor Vitae, if I'm my Latin. And the key word here is flow. And instant gratification, too, is what Joanne says. Well, yes, and that probably has a lot to do with what I was talking about yesterday with time. As things speed up, it's like we need things faster and faster. But yeah, we are a society where we expect that the things that work are the things that fix it right away. And yeah, that's definitely part of it, too. There's no patience. There's the slowing down, right? There's no patience to take your time and go through something. There's a lot here about telling us to take our time. Okay, so our keyword on this card is flow. Trigger statement is, why are things such a struggle? The true statement is, I am in the flow. Remember, we got the water card, right? Take a breath and allow yourself to feel the flow of life through you. Release your need to do and just be. Okay. So that's the card that we have for today. And I think that does a pretty good job of summing it up. And again, sometimes I feel like it's being repetitive, but remember, these are just words, right? It's something that we have to feel and experience. And so sometimes it's just something you want to sit with, just continue to do your thing and see where it is. And Joanne gives the boom shakalaka. Yeah, exactly. It's the validation here. What was I used to see when I was reading the Carlos Castaneda books, where things would happen and then they would say, see, this, the trees are agreeing with me. This is agreeing with me. That's agreeing with me. Yeah. It's, you know, nature can agree with you. So yeah, something to think about, or maybe not think too hard about. So anyway, thank you guys for joining me today. I will be back. Yes, I will be on tomorrow morning. I do have kind of a busy week coming up, trying to finish up stuff for this course I'm starting to teach next week, and more Mercury retrograde, trying to get onboarded at the university. But anyway, enough. That's a different story.